I was 17 years old. My aunt had just given me my first cine camera. Right away, I put aside my still camera and ran off to film our church to thank the Lord. Then I asked people to come out of their houses. It was a bit like still photography. I never really got out of that habit. I filmed Miss Fearworth, who buried all her husbands in her house. She never wanted to tell me if it was true. Even when she was dead, she still scared me some. I filmed the man from the toy shop who displayed all his family in front of the shop to show that just because he was prosperous didn't mean he led a sinful life. I filmed Timothy Skiro back when he was honest. I still to this day don't know how he turned into the bandit we know now. Timothy intimidated me a bit, but he was a great guy. Now, the day of his first court appearance, I was the only one waiting there. And when they finally took him away, I had no film left. I'm the only one who can remember his face at that moment. The newspaper boy was quite a little bird. He used to say he'd pulled out one of his teeth so he could whistle louder. Every year, people passed through who we were sure never to see again. But me, I didn't want to forget them. One day, I filmed the two we called the Railroad Twins. They were kind of well known in the county, so the train often used to stop to make them happy. They never got on it. They never left Church Road. They always had their suitcases with them, but everyone knew they were empty. In fact, very few folks got on the train at Church Road. The station keeper was always worried it was going to be closed down. He thought of it as a bit like his house. His son wanted to be a train driver. And I know he made it. I'm glad. Every day I filmed Margaret. I loved her. I filmed her. Then we got married. We lived in this house for 35 years at number 66, and we got real close to our neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Young. We used to spend just about every Sunday with them. Mr. Young was kind of secretive. He was real proud of his situation. Mrs. Young was a real sweet woman. Robert Young was born 1 month before Gloria. We waited so we could baptize them the same day. A great occasion. You could say that from their very first hours, Gloria and Robert were always together, and we gave up all our time to them. We spent long days in the garden. We spoke of the future, about having large families. But life had different ideas, and neither the Youngs nor us had any other children. Gloria and Robert shared the same games, the same fears, the same joys. Maybe they share the same memories. The day they went to school for the first time, we were as torn up as they were because we knew it was the end of a chapter. They were already starting to leave us. A while later, Young became sullen and irritable. It's true that in being protective of our children, we did everything we could so they'd stay together. How many secrets did they have left to share when they fell for each other? It was around the same time that Mr. and Mrs. Young got divorced. The thing that surprised us was how quick he had his ex-secretary move in. The day our children went out on their first date together, Young refused to lend them his car. I figured he was getting old with all the bitterness of a spoiled child, and as time went on, he couldn't stand the sight of youth and all the promise it contains. The long-announced marriage took place, but it wasn't the celebration we'd looked forward to, and everyone made an effort to get it over as quick as possible. 2 years later, the Mendoza business shook up Church Road. Maria Mendoza was 25 years old. She worked as a home help for some neighbors close by. One day, she disappeared, taking nothing with her. The police didn't make any inquiries because nobody lodged a complaint. Since I'd never filmed Maria Mendoza outside the house, I filmed her room. On the 28th of June, 1963, we were awakened by a strong smell of smoke. Young was burning green leaves. Was he trying to hide something or attract our attention? We never saw much of him. He'd never been interested in gardening. The following Sunday, I suggested that my wife give a puppy to the new Mrs. Young. Mr. Young had stayed over in New York on business. Seeing how happy she was, I was suddenly ashamed of what I was doing. Real early next morning, I lay in wait. I decided to film secretly from every possible part of my house. To this day, I don't know why I didn't have a frank talk with Young from the first. I, who had always filmed folks head-on, now found myself under covers, behind curtains, or balancing in the bathtub, keeping watch on my neighbor, who was happily walking her little dog, who she looked on as a real token of our friendship. I didn't like it, but I did it. On the third day, at 11:13 a.m., the dog went scratching around the bushes where I'd seen Mr. Young, but our neighbor intervened too quick and nothing happened. The fourth day, he was back there at 5:24 p.m., but his mistress was still right behind him. To get her to leave the dog outside, I asked my wife to call her on the phone, but in spite of the insistent ringing, she went after him again. But I knew I wouldn't have long to wait. The next day, nothing happened. But on the sixth day, the dog stopped short. Something must have spooked him because he didn't do anything. I had to wait for the ninth day. It was at exactly 2:38 p.m. that the dog went into the bushes. Mrs. Young only called him once. Then she, too, gave in to curiosity, and after making sure no one was about, she started scratching around real hard, like someone who really wanted to find something. At 2:54 p.m., she found, I only saw it later, a glove. I guessed it was the first, but in fact, this one completed the pair. To my astonishment, she came looking for me. I asked my wife, who'd stayed hidden to film everything we got up to. She freely showed me the blood-stained gloves and the place where, thanks to the dog, she'd found them. I acted like I was amazed and had just found out. It was about 3:15 when I started digging. Anyone could see us, but curiosity can really get a hold of you. It took me a good half hour to dig up the bushes. I found the head first. She had short hair like a nun. It really was poor Maria Mendoza. Our neighbor asked me who on earth could have done this. I replied I was very much afraid it was Mr. Young. I could see she was real upset. She asked me how long I'd known. I told her about 2 weeks. I kept feeling sorry for her, and deep down I was mad at myself for what I'd done, but I just couldn't forget the body behind us. In the end, she came back and asked me if that was why I'd given her the puppy. I'm afraid my silence said it all. Later, she told me that Mr. Young was real happy at the idea that he'd soon be a grandfather for the third time. I thought the children should be kept in the dark about all this. I reckoned it was all pretty hard on her. Real hard. So I replanted the bushes. The Sundays continued. We never spoke about it again. We just kind of tacitly agreed never to go down the end of the garden. As for me, I never again filmed folks sitting out front of their houses because I could no longer look them in the face to ask them. I gave all my archives to the Church Road Library. I saved my last shots for my family. I haven't touched my camera for 10 years now. When I look at these pictures again, I feel grotesque, and I reckon we all were. What happened? What was I thinking of? Young died last year. I decided to talk.